Okay, hi sisters and brothers. We're back for a very quick video, but in my humble opinion, or maybe not so humble, a very important video. So this is about the dividing of the covenant, which we see as the Red Sea allegory, which we see as an admixture of doctrine, which then becomes wine sitting on the table. So we were looking at it as these two covenants that you see. Actually, it's two covenants, but they're two covenants of the same. They're two separate parts of the same covenant. Let me say it the way I need to. So that is in the covenant in Genesis 15:9. Abraham was told to take a heifer, a she-goat, and a ram, and to cleave them in the midst and to put them each one to one side, right? And then there was a turtle dove, feminine, and a pigeon, masculine. He was not to cleave them and to place one to one side and one to the other. Now, I took the track that because they denied the covenant of the righteous daughters, and I'm getting hot, which was represented as water, that when they split when the presence of God identified as the daughters, who actually had the power to do that, split the Red Sea, it's about splitting the admixture of doctrine into these two covenants, right? That we see in Genesis 15:9. One's a feminine and one's masculine. Now, we are going to identify which is which. Now, what picture kept coming up in my mind every time I pictured this parting of the Red Sea into these particular two covenants, one of blood, I would say, and one of water. What didn't make sense was that it was a Red Sea that was parted and the presence went through, right? So technically, it wouldn't have been this covenant, this picture of pure water on one side and the red, this red colored water on the other side. It wouldn't have looked that way. It would have all been the same water, part of the same really covenant, though one is identified as a feminine aspect and one is identified as a masculine aspect of the same covenant. So I began to take a different track on it, and it absolutely, over a few days, God put it together, and it makes so much sense. It's quite amazing. So let's take a quick look at a couple of verses to establish this truth, okay? Because it is there. Okay, so when we go to this side, we'll go with the feminine side here. We begin to see what's known as the purists, right? Yes, we do. And to sum it up, on the other side would be the powers of darkness. We'll simplify it that way. So what's a purist law look like? Well, you can't do anything and you've got to follow all of these laws of God, and there's absolutely no wiggle room in that law. None. And the powers of darkness is anything goes, which really only makes it safe for a handful, this law of anything goes with powers of darkness. You do whatever you want, get away with whatever you want, which makes it very dangerous for most of us to even stick our head up above out the door, above the ground, whatever, without the thought that you're going to get your head blowed off or something. So both of these portions of basically the same covenant, admixture of doctrine, adds up to the same thing in most cases. And you know what that is? Intolerance. And we can absolutely identify the purest part of this. We can also identify the powers of darkness in the sense that they began to take control of this law where anything goes. We saw in, is it Joshua or Judges? I had the wrong. I think it was Judges now that maybe it was Joshua. But in Judges where it says, and every man did according to what was in his heart. And that's the power of darkness coming in and taking control of basically what was supposed to be the law off of her tongue, basically is what we've understood on this channel. So what we see is with the Shulamite saying, my mother's sons were angry with me. They made me the keeper of the vineyard. Look not upon me, the sun has looked upon me and made me black. What we see there is the powers of darkness, light shining on her. That's what we see, which was a false light. Lucifer is defined as being a false light, being illuminated, but with the false light. And that's the covenant that the Shulamite Shulamite became stuck under. And so she says, but my own vineyard I have not kept. This is the powers of darkness. And in that you get extremism in that as well, which creates so much violence in the land, and every man doing according to what's in his heart, which is the male side of this wicked covenant, represented by the admixture of doctrine of the Red Sea. The other side was a little bit harder to pin down until I started paying attention to what I should. And that was in the Old Testament. We're going to read this. Where is it? Numbers 12:10. First off, right? So Numbers 12:10. When the cloud lifted from above the tent, Miriam's skin was leprous. It became as white as snow. And Aaron turned toward her, and saw that she had defiling skin disease. You see what we got now? Right? White. We've got white. We know it's white because of this verse in Exodus 4:6. Then the Lord said, put your hand inside your cloak. So Moses put his hand inside his cloak, and when he took it out, the skin was leprous. It had become as white as snow. So we get the two extremes here. We get white as a purist, right? Then we get the Shulamite, look not upon me. My mother's sons were angry with me. They made me the keeper of the vineyard. Look not upon me, because the sun has looked, the false light. That's the powers of darkness coming in, taking control of the law. So we got darkness and we got white, or we got black and we got white, right? What's in the middle, you suppose? And why was Miriam made leprous? Because Moses had took in covenant or in marriage a woman that was not considered part of their tribe, right? So what was Miriam really showing here? A severe lack of tolerance on God's law. God's law should not be so extreme, right? That there's absolutely no wiggle room whatsoever. And it should not be so extreme that nobody is safe in it, especially the women, right? We'll just summarize it very simple because I don't have much time. So we'll go to this. I wasn't going to use it. We'll use it briefly. That Noah had 3 sons. And which son had the blessing that God's people, chosen people, would come through? Shem. It was Shem. I think Shem was the middle son. Then we have Japheth, which is largely considered where the white races come from, or your Caucasian as they're called. Some would put the Asians and the Oriental people in there. Then you have Cush, where the black people come from, the black tribes come from, versus where the white tribes come from. And then you have Oriental and Asians also are sometimes classed inside that group. What do we have up the middle? We sort of have a mixed group. So we're not saying that this is an actual skin color. God was using the allegories of these to teach us the truth, that we could not go this way or the other way. We actually had to follow those 10 commandments. So the Semitics are often, anywhere dark to light in their skin tones, which you can go to either sides of these, because what we're looking at is a mixed multitude of purists, and what we were looking at in darkness and black was a mixed multitude as well that would tolerate anything. So you cannot, God is saying in this allegory, I think, with Miriam, it shows it so well. She had become very intolerant of Moses marrying this woman that was outside their camp, outside their people. And she was so intolerant of that God says, I'm going to mark you with leprosy and put you outside the camp. So it's actually identifying to us what the disease of leprosy was. It became so law-binding and intolerant in its law system that Miriam, as a woman, showed this so clear. And it was on Miriam, and I can argue this, I don't think Moses was a man. I don't. I think Moses was another woman. And there was coming in this disagreement. Or Moses was a chosen man by the sovereign Lord who was a woman. And there was becoming this contention against what should be permitted and what should not be permitted. And so Miriam come up against that, right? As a purist in the law. So, and you do get it this skin was leprous. She became white as snow, and she was put outside the camp, and she was put out for the explicit reason that she was going against Moses' marriage. And God said, that's extreme. That's extreme. This woman is willing to follow the ways of God, the laws. Why does that make her every bit as much a part of this camp as you? So we see that extreme, just like we can understand the powers of darkness and how they began to come in and take control. And we see the priest that was called, a man said, let me call you father. My son, let me call you father, my father. So and that was in Judges, and we're going to, maybe in the future, I don't know how long I'm going to be up and running, but because I'm getting tired and I have so much on my plate lately. But, it is so there. But the fact that you've got multiracial, actually, in the purists, you've got multiracial in the blackness, whiteness, and then coming up the middle, you have, again, another mixed multitude that God kind of identifies as sort of what the Semitics look like. So God is telling us, when God gave us those 10 commandments, there was wiggle room in those 10 commandments. But we could not even uphold those 10 commandments. We were to uphold those 10 commandments. And I think when you are able to uphold those 10 commandments, there is tolerance in that law. There is. As long as it's not harming anybody, as long as everybody is safe and able to grow and feel free under those 10 commandments, I don't think, we none want to live in this purist regime where there's so many laws set that there's absolutely no wiggle room at all, which is exampled by Miriam. Then we see the Shulamite who was handing over her vineyard to the powers of darkness, more or less, is what we are shown. So we do see this admixture of doctrine being in the earth right now. We see this covenant identified either as one or the other. And they're certainly mixed in the world. We see this in the world, and that is the covenant that is governing our world currently. But we are supposed to be walking in the middle of that. Yeah, it sounds like I'm enforcing, what the occult world teaches, but God taught balance. And it takes extreme wisdom to understand that balance. It really does. We've become so contaminated with either the religious lies, and we can look at what's caused most of the wars in this world. Most of the wars in this world, when we study it, has been caused by formed religion, by laws with absolutely no wiggle room from one belief system to the other. And you can go to the Vatican in the Inquisitions that they held, just a complete sense of intolerance to Islamists who are intolerant of women but it all comes back to men as well, because we know what religious lies actually go after. They go after the woman, and the man is the one usually implementing these laws upon her. So basically what you got ruling in the land is his feelings, I won't say it, but he's sexualized everything. And so woman has to come under him in order for him to get exactly what he wants, And so I'm not saying it very well because I'm so tied up on time here. But we know that the religious wars are fought by men, and they're fought, and in the end, it's usually the woman that suffers with the subjugation of a law on her neck. They call it a law. And we know why the men do it, because it allows the powers of darkness, in a sense, to rule by her being forced to hand over her children to his religious lies and doctrine. Goes straight back to the purists here as well, this law binding. So you got the two extremes actually tied up in the exact same covenant, right? And it's the covenant of water by the presence of God. These women, when they were walking righteously in the laws of God, that were to establish the laws. Now it tries to say Moses was the lawgiver. Moses was not the lawgiver. Moses took the law out from the lawgiver, which was the daughter of Zion, or daughter of Israel herself. And they were all turning on that in one way or another. They were becoming extreme purists, or they were becoming extremely dark in the way that they looked at everything. And so we have it all tied up into that admixture of lies called the red wine on the table. And so we've examined how that's led to idolatry of your male idols in the land. We know it's the men imposing the religious law system upon 9 times out of 10, the women's neck. They're after the women 9 times out of 10. But we know that going after the women leads to subjugation of also righteous sons as well. We would not take that away from them. I'm here studying the feminine aspect because there is no man that would do that for us. We actually have to take it upon ourselves to do it. And so I tend to focus on the feminine aspect. If that offends you, then perhaps you should go to a man's channel where he's exclusively on Jesus and that's it. If that's what you want, then you should go there. But I'm looking for the truth. I want the truth. And I know my God is a God of fairness, truth, and equity, and that we need to be taking that middle ground. We do. We've got to be finding that middle ground to stand on. I see the covenant so different now. This true covenant so different. And it was largely because of Miriam on that other side that drew me to it. And the Lord was telling me, go look. And I just didn't have the time to really go pull her up. And once I did, then I completely, bam, I got it. I completely understood what was going on. We got the extreme of the same covenant and the powers of darkness, or the boys at the top. They'll pull from that purist, or they'll pull from the extreme, you can do anything, darkness, and they'll just keep pulling from them to keep creating the chaotic mess that we see ruling in the world today, especially. And one quick, thought, I see these boys in here, just here to stir up crap. Where are all the feminists to fight for the women in the East? Just because the women are having great troubles in the East, I would never take away from that. Those poor women are suffering from the Islamist extremist law on women's neck again. Does not mean or prohibit it from happening still over here. We see women coming out of religion now, especially, and I'm going to mention a channel here, I've watched her off and on, Cults to Consciousness. Women who have come out of extreme religions of Jesus at the heart of it, where women were forced to do things that should have never come into play. So we still have it going on over here, you feminists. There's another channel I like to watch, Megan Murphy is her name. Where are all the women is the name of her channel. Well, she's saying we're right here, but just because you boys like to pretend we're not here, speaking up for women everywhere does not mean that we are not here. You can put out your propagandist crap all you want. It does not mean we are not here. You can shadow ban us all you'd like. You can deplatform them all. It doesn't take from the fact that they are here speaking. And so you can say feminists all you want, because you boys think that you're going to hinder us from speaking the truth for women. And we will do it, and we will get stronger, and we will show you boys where you are so wrong on everything that you believe when it comes to your religious lies. So anyway, I probably shouldn't have said that, but I did. Anyway, that's the video. I wanted it to be pretty quick. But yet it's so vitally important that we understand it. We may get a better handle on it in the future if I'm still around doing videos. If not, it's a route that you can take in your own personal understanding. We do. We're seeing extremists on one side lacking any tolerance whatsoever in the law, no wiggle room whatsoever. God never intended the law system to behave this way. Absolutely not. And to the point of anything goes, you can do whatever you want, do what you will, the powers of darkness, which makes it dangerous, especially for women. We know this. Women suffers in both of these. They really do. And we were to have that middle ground. We were to part that admixture of religious lies and actually pull the real truth out of it, so that the presence, the true ones, that will come away from both sides of these covenants, this one covenant that's really divided into two extremes. And they're going to come out of that, and they're going to walk up that middle pathway. So, I mean, they used to preach against that. They did. And there was another verse I wanted to throw in there. and I didn't go looking for it. Maybe you can, where the sun and the moon will share the sky and both will burn 7 times brighter. And that's again an allegory to this, the true covenant of God and what it was supposed to look like. So anyway, I got to call it. I got to be leaving. Thanks for watching the video. Thanks for being patient with me. I hope I didn't mess up. I got my diffuser going. Anyway, just thought I'd put it on for you to look at. Not that you can really see it all that well. Anyway, thanks for watching. I pray the Lord blesses you with an abundance of truth. I pray you find your own personal anointings, what you are to be studying, what you're to be doing for the Lord, for the true Lord who was tolerant, and was not this extremist. We get the idea that she actually was the Lord Mare in the book of Revelation, who is called the Lord of Kings, and she was the Lord of Kings. But you get that she was a domineering lord. Now, whether that happened due to the fact that they were becoming too loose on the other side, that she felt she had to tighten it, I don't know. But there is some indication that she was a domineering lord. Why she became a domineering lord is part of the study. And that was because the powers of darkness was coming in and saying, do what you will. And she knew what that was leading to. That's what wisdom does. She can see what's going to happen. She's been down this path before. She's seen it, and she knows what it leads to, especially for her daughters, either a yoking or that she's placed in extreme harm and danger, again, to where the men will go, hey, we do what we want with women. Every man did according to what was in his heart, or we'll write a law and put it on her neck where she can't do nothing. So you suffer no matter which one you go into. You got to be walking in those 10 commandments, which is going to bring on benefits for everybody in the system. Not just for a core small group at the top playing God. So anyway, there's a video. Again, thank you for watching. I pray the Lord blesses you with an abundance of truth. And thanks for watching. Have a nice day.